Hey everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Jared Tendler, mental game coach for golfers, traders, and poker players. And I'm here with Chris Vermeulen from TheTechnicalTraders.com. And today we're going to do something a little bit different than what you normally see from us. Those of you who know me, who know Chris, have no doubt seen a number of the interviews that we've done before. You know our backgrounds, you know our perspectives on a lot of the areas that we specialize. Me with the mental side of trading, and Chris as a trader who specializes in swing trading, position trading, and long-term investing. But today we're just going to have a conversation. I think there's been a number of times where I've had conversations with traders, and I think, man, it would be cool for somebody to be a fly on the wall and get to hear all this. So here you all are, fly on the wall. So let's kind of just get this started. Chris, for those that don't know you, do you mind just sharing a bit about your background and kind of what got you here?
Sure, yeah. So I've been trading for about 24 years. I got in high school, I got hooked in business class on a stock market challenge against other schools. And our classroom, we killed it. We had an amazing semester and made almost like $300,000 in a semester. And that was it. I was like, well, I'm just going to trade for a living. I mean, I don't have to deal with anybody, talk to anybody, or sell anything. I mean, it was love at first sight is what it was. And so I ended up just learning to trade, and I traded through college. And last year of college, I made enough money to pay for residence and tuition and everything else. And I started teaching my roommates and stuff. Not that I knew a lot back then. It was a lot of good luck. It was a big tech bubble and big bull market. But that was when I started teaching and trading. And so I've been doing it 24 years. I've been sharing it, running a service online since 2000. So been around the block through a couple cycles, bull market, bear market cycles, and I'm still here, loving it. And you get better every year, and just trying to help as many people as I can. So I live and breathe it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. And was there something about trading that just, I mean, aside from the money, like that kind of checked off a few of the boxes? Like, did you want to be an entrepreneur and work independently? And
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So my parents were always entrepreneurs. They had their own businesses. Through high school, I was the lawn barber. I had a little barber pole on my trailer. I cut lawns, and I did all kinds of random jobs. Right. I was always looking to make money. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've started a health product business years ago, built that up, built a dealer network across Canada, the United States, sold it. I'm into self-storage facilities. I built some of those and keep those and rental properties. I'm always looking for that residual income, and we'll probably touch on it later, but trading becomes a lot easier when you're not dependent on creating that paycheck all the time, where people feel like they have to trade. It causes over trading and stress. And that's where your mental game plan book really comes into play. And that's the part that gets everybody. And it's funny because once you have money, it's easy to make more because you don't have the stresses. You get to wait for opportunities and all that stuff. But always been an entrepreneur looking for cool opportunities. A couple of years ago, I invented the world's first flying jet surfboard, and I patented and
nice.
licensed that out. And I'm very technical in nature. So I'm a pilot. I got my pilot's license before I was legally allowed to drive a car, which is pretty crazy. And so I'm used to like checklists and systems, which you're all about, which I'm all about for trading and the mental game. So, just my mindset really took a hold of the markets, and I just segregated it, broke it into chunks, and learned to really, figure out how to attack this market one kind of step at a time. So it's pretty interesting. And then what about you? Are you a full on entrepreneur? I know you're a poker player, so you like risk.
Yeah. Well, I'd say I'm actually not a full-time poker player. I came from the poker world, actually from the golf world. So I, kind of got into mental game and sports psychology because I choked trying to qualify for the US Open back in 1997. And, it was one of those situations where, it happens once, but then, in big national events, it happens a couple more times. It's like, all right, well, there's a problem here. It's got to get solved. And I was a three-time All-American, Division III Skidmore College, won 9 tournaments in college. So I had, some game, but there's a difference between kind of playing at that level and a few levels higher. And so I kind of dove into sports psychology and learned as much as I could. And it didn't really solve my issues in that spot. It got me better in general, but not when the pressure was kind of at its highest. So I actually, kind of took a bit of a departure from that career aspiration and got a master's degree in counseling psychology. Spent 2 years getting licensed as a therapist, and then try to kind of combine those two worlds of sports psychology and therapy into effectively a career working with golfers, and started working with some PGA Tour players. But then I met a poker player on the golf course, and there was this whole big, sort of industry that wasn't really being served by somebody like me. I think by and large, they said, oh, well, poker players are gamblers. And frankly, I had a lot of clients early on who'd said they'd gone to see, therapists trying to get help for their tilt issues, their anger issues. And
Yeah.
everybody was trying to convince them to stop playing poker. And here I am saying, no, I want you to keep playing. You just got to play better.
Yeah.
So that kind of kicked it off. And then a number of traders picked up my first book, The Mental Game of Poker, and just sort of saw the parallels, and then started picking up more trading clients, and a few years later wrote The Mental Game of Trading. So it's been kind of a wild ride, but entrepreneur for sure. I mean, I feel like I had ideas for where I wanted my career to go, but I just sort of saw these different markets and different angles, and was excited to kind of pivot. It was exciting for me to learn new industries, and I love learning. So certainly getting to meet new people.
Well, you can definitely see it in your book. I mean, it's the depth that you go into. I mean, I wrote a book on trading, but it's more focusing on the technical side, how I break the markets into chunks and time frames and different types of analysis. But you go into the whole mental side, which I'm just a small chapter of that. And the depth that you go into here is really mind blowing. I mean, I'm reading through it and my brain's going, oh my God, he's like literally inside my brain. Like it's so amazing. If I could only explain what you are explaining in this book to my followers and subscribers, they'd actually like see the markets the way they need to be seen and attack them in the proper mindset, because it's, as you and I are talking today, the markets are crashing. We're seeing precious metals sell off, oil's dropping 6%. I mean, there's panic. The VIX is up really high. It's like up 33% today. There's panic selling on the New York Stock Exchange, which is a little custom indicator. I track money flow, and right now we're like 27 people hitting the sell button to every one hitting the buy button. And so when there's 27 people running out the door and only one left, it's a herd mentality and everyone's freaking out. And I consider a ratio of 3 to be panic. So 27 today is
wow.
People are definitely on tilt. And it's funny because I talk to my subscribers in the morning. I say, listen, guys, the markets are going to gap down huge. Everyone's going to be in a panic today. Just know this is not the end of the world. Don't freak out. The market's flushing out. It's going to shake everybody up. There's going to be huge volume. And I try to mentally prepare them for the opening bell. And then of course, 9:30 it opens and you just see the volume and the spike in volatility and stuff. And it's just
how do they typically handle it? So you do a lot of that prep work. How do they then handle it? Does it make a difference? You see kind of some people handle it better than others, and do you know kind of what some of the differences are between them?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've got a wide range of users who are probably losing their cool today, big time. And then I've got other people that have been with me for a long time, and they're like, wow, like I totally get it. We were totally prepared. I know what's going on. So what if our trades are down 1.5%, 2% today? It's not a big deal, really. I mean, but other people are just completely panicking, and how they deal with it is you get a really nasty email, which I don't really see anymore because I have somebody helping me and they filter out it because I don't need the negativity. I know some people are upset, and then other people just sit back and they manage positions. It all comes down to systemizing things. And you talk about systems in your book and how your strategy of systemizing the game plan, the mental game plan, how it can really solve greed and fear and indecision and confidence or overconfidence, all those things. Well, I have trading strategies that just make it super easy. We just follow the rules. If it starts to go against us, eventually either the trend is going to change from the technical standpoint, we close out our positions, or our trailing stops get hit and we close them out, and then we wait for the market to reset and we wait for another opportunity. But people don't like to watch their accounts go down, even if it's gone up for the last month. It's just people don't have that right mindset. And if they could read this, what I've read in it, I mean, it's mind blowing. It really is. It's a huge game changer, because what you're explaining in some of there is just, I can't get it across to people, but you've got the education to actually say it in a way that it's going to sink in and they're going to go, you know what, that does make sense. And so it's important. The mental game is everything. It really is a huge chunk of it. So.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, Chris. And I should say full disclosure, there's been no money exchange here. This is not a paid advertisement, but I appreciate the good words, man. one thing as you're talking about, like, a day like today, that I've kind of noticed is that, so you put an email like that out, or even somebody who is not working with you yet, and they kind of have a game plan in their own mind. They've got themselves in a good spot. They kind of have a sense that, today could be a bit of a bloodbath. But then, the stress of the day just kind of is wearing. I feel like, that's one example. Sometimes you see, traders kind of just waiting for their stops, or sorry, for their targets to be hit. And it's almost like the stress of kind of paying attention to that kind of drains you mentally, and you kind of do stupid things just because you're kind of so fixated and so kind of in it. Have you seen that a lot as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just a natural habit of traders to hit that refresh button or check your phone all the time to see where you're. I mean, there's no need. I mean, unless you're a day trader, you really don't need to ride that intraday roller coaster. You're better to just look at the end of the day and be like, oh, I'm down 0.5%, oh, or 0.5% or up, whatever. It's hard. It's hard not to be involved and want to know what's going on, right? And trading can really suck up your time. If you've got another job and you're in trades and you don't know how to block out the trading, like I focus on swing trading, position trading. So when we get into a trade, the average trade lasts about 39 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some nice targets. It usually takes several days to hit a target, and things move nice and slow. So you can go and do your other things and not worry about intraday action. But some people just can't separate that. They have to be refreshing and checking their screen, and they'll probably waste 3 hours a day refreshing screens, like, and looking at the charts, and then looking at the 1 minute chart to see what it's doing really close and zoom back out. It's a very addicting sport. It's kind of like gambling in a way. And if you know what you're doing, you can definitely be the house, but the emotions like to get the better of us for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like this is like one of the big kind of differentiators with trading and poker. There's obviously a lot of similarities, and I know you play poker as well. But you never see a poker session kind of last 39 days, right? And the timing of the frequency with which you're making decisions is not that often. But I think for the people that are constantly kind of auto refreshing, it's almost like they're making decisions when they ought not to be, because like every time you kind of auto refresh it, you're still kind of making the decision to not get out of a position you should stay in. So you're kind of making a lot more decisions than you ought to be, and effectively can be kind of decision fatigue in a sense. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that poker players and traders go through similar things, but the mechanisms by which they go through them can be so different.
Yeah. So my followers, I mean, I've got a large following, about 100,000 followers. And so I guarantee they're going to want to know more about what your book is for sure. So if you can explain like 2 or 3 sentences, what your whole book is about, because the mental game of trading is what I deal with, because I get the mental put on an email and then fired to me. So it'd be amazing for you to kind of share what your book's all about, because that's really the key here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the simple thing is we're trying to remove the emotion from your decision making and execution, right? I mean, I think you're putting forth a strategy and a system, and it's less about kind of understanding the nuts and bolts of it, and more about actually just the execution of it. And the execution is everything. So to me, your decision making process is very much like a golfer's golf swing, right? Or a basketball player in there, how they move around the court and are able to kind of pass and shoot with proficiency. As a trader, you're making decisions with that kind of precision, and removing the negative effects that emotion can have on that is really what the book is about. So we're talking mainly about greed and anger issues and confidence issues and fear, and those are kind of the big ones. A lot of people think they have discipline problems, but what they really have is an emotion kind of underlying those failures and breakdowns of discipline. So I kind of talk about discipline deep into the book, kind of after you've already ruled out, that you're not dealing with one of those 4 emotions.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you mentioned, or we mentioned that you kind of have an interest in poker as well. When did you start playing poker in college, or have you played some, poker tournaments? Like what's been your poker background?
Yeah, well, my dad was always big into blackjack. And so when we go on holidays to Caribbean Islands or whatever, I'd usually go or to England or whatever, go play in the casinos with them because you can be there underage, or at least watch your dad play.
Right.
Anyways, I grew a love for blackjack. He's got some great strategies. I ended up playing blackjack. I made my own blackjack table. Used to throw my own casino parties. And then eventually I got into poker in college, and absolutely loved it. And I got into Howard Lederer. He had his whole book and strategy, and I ended up buying a copy. I created a poker league in my town. I gave everyone Howard Lederer's thing. I said, "This is our club. We're playing poker. Let's do it." And so we'd play every week. And I just absolutely loved it. I used to build custom poker tables and ship them around the world, or at least in the States and Canada. And I just fell in love with it. I played a few big tournaments online, like 1,800 people. That was my biggest one. I came in second place. I lost with a pair of pocket queens, never forget.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably still in your brain.
But I just love poker, and I love, the way I kind of relate poker to trading is if I want to go with a bunch of buddies for a night and play poker, I can either go out and this is how I see it, is I can go and have a ton of fun, play a lot of hands. My chip count goes up and down like a yo-yo. There's a lot of luck, a lot of bad draws too. Yep. But it's a super fun night, but you generally don't place. And then I can go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to bunker down tonight. It's going to be a boring game, and I'm just going to stick and play good cards. If something's too crazy, I'm just going to fold it, even if I think I might have it. And I can always place. And not always, but more times than not, I'd place. And that's the way I see trading. So you can either go out and you can trade a whole bunch of fast, crazy movers and ride that roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster, or you can get really boring in trading and turn it into something that's consistent and profitable. And if it's boring, that means you've got systems in place. You talked about it in your book, like impatience. If people are impatient, if you have a strategy, you don't really become impatient because you're waiting for that strategy for everything to happen. Okay, we're one step closer to a new trade. But you can't really teach or learn impatience. You can't force yourself, as you say in the book, to be impatient, right? But if you have a strategy like the strategy we trade, which is the band trading strategy, we look back and we're like, okay, we are like at least 3 or 4 days away from a trade potential. We don't have to do anything. And while most people would be going nuts saying, I want to trade something this week. Well, it feels comfortable because we're like, well, I see one coming and it's going to be good. And we're not just trying to find something that's half decent. We're waiting for a real market setup where we can really get into almost any equity and the whole market's going to move and it'll move with it. But if you get into a stock when the market's not in favor, it's going to pull that stock down. So I like to look at the markets as a whole, as like the ocean tide. And I look for broad market signals. And then when those signals happen, that's when I apply money to specific sectors, look for the best sector, and those ones should rally the best and move the most. But it comes down to the strategies and trying to make trading boring, because then you're not always glued to the screen and you're not searching for new trades. You're letting them come to you. And that's where, once you're kind of financially set, you don't feel like you need to day trade every day to make that weekly income, which the more you trade, the more likely you're to make mistakes, lose money. I read a report the other day saying that day traders, they think about 1% of day traders actually ever are consistently profitable for a 10-year window. Wow. So that's not very good. Swing traders are like 99, 95% fail. And then as you go to long-term investor, long-term, you almost can't fail, right. But you got to go through some heck of a roller coasters. So, day trading, I kind of found a sweet spot between investing in like swing trading. And I found like the nice tide in the market. There's quarterly and monthly earnings and all kinds of economic data, create cycles. I play that money flow. I ride the coattails of the big institutions. And so I focus on that side of the equation.
You, because you mentioned Howard Lederer's perspective, and for those poker players who know me will know that that's a bit of a swear word these days because the fallout from full tilt poker. But aside from that,
I haven't been in poker for a long time. It's probably been 10 years. I don't even know where Howard Lederer is anymore.
It's okay. It's all good. But was that like the first system that you kind of was exposed to, and did that give you some indication of the systems that could be created within trading kind of once you made that pivot in college as well?
Like from poker, you mean?
Yeah, just like, yeah, just understanding that there's more strategy kind of to it. I mean, I think to make a bunch of money in trading, you obviously, that there's systems are possible, and obviously you're a systems guy and kind of think in
Yeah.
those terms. But when you kind of start to see that, all right, well, here's the system for blackjack and here's the system for poker, it's like, all right, well, what's the system going to be like for trading? And just kind of know that that's the end goal, is to produce something that provides that kind of consistent returns. Obviously, there's going to be ups and downs even within your
Yeah.
system, but to have the edge in this game requires one.
For sure. Yeah. It was definitely an eye opener learning like, hey, if you play a blackjack strategy or system, it's going to be fairly consistent. You're not just random anymore. If you play a poker strategy, whether it's loose or tight or however you want to play that, if you stick with something, you're going to be a lot more consistent. And my parents were entrepreneurs, and they were always about having systems in place. You hire staff, they run the systems, you just keep refining it and building it. And so it's all about, trying to put systems in place. And as a business owner, eventually you want to systemize everything so you can systemize yourself out of a job. And then it's, a saleable asset. That's a machine that runs. And so I've definitely learned at a young age that it's all about systemizing. And when originally I was learning to trade and doing my newsletter online for trading, and I would just go nuts after a while. Like, oh, I hate having to go look for another trade and take another swing at the market. It'd be nice if I just had a strategy that would say, here's one that pops up every week type thing. And so I just slowly refine different strategies for different time frames. Could be day trading, could be momentum, whatever it is. I've got a strategy for it. And as you know, you need to have multiple different strategies. Depending on the market conditions, the environment, the sport, the length of time. I mean, you're constantly tuning your strategies, but you're always still going between one strategy or another. You're never just kind of just off making your own up on the fly, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people have struggled on the psychological side, because there wasn't necessarily, there was like a lot of good advice. To me, it almost felt, and I'm not being denigrating towards the Mark Douglases and the Brett Steenbargers, because I think their work is very strong. But I think it has more of a flavor of stock picking in a sense, where there's not a system to kind of utilize their knowledge quite as efficiently as effectively. It's like, it's very good advice, it's very good perspective that I think a lot of traders need to have, especially Douglas's work feels like kind of foundational for new traders. But if you don't have that sort of system to kind of pull all that together, kind of understanding some of the fundamental principles of how the mind operates, then it becomes very difficult to make consistent progress. And for me, like, the edge in the mental game is, right, your ability to remove the bias out of the market, right? Instead of, we're so often like trying to desperately pull out of the market what we want, whether it's our goals or our livelihood or our confidence in some respects. All those biases get imprinted. So how you pull them out of it, you got to study yourself. I see the charts behind you. Effectively, we're trying to create some, kind of price movement equivalencies of your own emotional state, right? If you can kind of see that in real time, you have the ability to identify edge and opportunity. The opportunity here is to maintain a level of calm, lucid decision making, on a consistent basis.
Yeah. So when you're talking to traders, like, I guess, when do you find almost all traders have like trading psychology issues? I would think we all do to some regard, but like, when you look and talk to traders, what are the general major issues? And yeah, I don't know, just how do you go about dealing with traders and walking them through scenarios? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think no trader is perfect, right? So theoretically, every trader has some psychological weakness to them. When I work with institutional traders, some of the, probably some of the best traders in the world, their weaknesses are far more minor and fine tuning, right? So, you wouldn't be surprised that earlier this year, I was talking with a fair number of traders who were having difficulty, dealing with the amount of money that they had won, money they'd won the previous year, right? Like, last year was a banner year for some of them, especially the options traders who, made significant money during the drawdowns of a year ago. And so, kind of like resetting and recalibrating, there was some overconfidence they were dealing with. There was just like some dealing with some boredom because, the markets for them were a bit slower. So yeah, it's impossible to have like kind of a perfect psyche at all times.
yeah,
We all have the ability to kind of get better. And, their relative weakness might be, still better than your relative strength, but that's okay, right? It's everybody's kind of in their own spot. But I think the big issues that I'm working with are the 5 that I mentioned. If we kind of drill down a little bit more specifically, there's a lot of greed and a lot of FOMO. One of the things I talk a lot about in the book is, while we may sort of say the headline is greed, behind it is really not often greed. I think greed kind of gets a bad rap because societally, it's something that's often kind of talked about in trading, but your job's to make money, right? It's no different than, Michael Jordan's job to, get the ball in the net and defend against somebody else doing it in his basket. We wouldn't call that greed if he was trying to, score more, unless he was doing it in a suboptimal way and actually causing his team to lose. So maybe early on in his career, we might say that he was a bit greedy, or we could just say that he wasn't, kind of educated enough to be able to win a championship, because he would win a lot of games, but not a championship yet. But we wouldn't call that greed, I think, in its purest form. We'd call that maybe a bit of overconfidence or, lack of trust in his teammates. So as a trader, we're kind of trying to strip away the headline and really look specifically at what are the real problems. And, FOMO is a big one. And I think people get kind of caught up in seeing others making money, and it very much can kind of pull them out of, what is their system and their strategy. And that's hard. There is tension there. But again, I think the more you are kind of rooted and grounded in a system that you believe in and can trust, it does take care of a lot of the psychological stuff. And typically where I work best with people is that they have some level of proficiency early on. And I was kind of going to ask you this as well. Early on, I think it's really difficult to know where the psychological weaknesses exist and where those psychological emotions come out, because you're actually just not that good of a trader yet, right? You don't kind of know what you're doing enough to know. So yeah, you should, have a lot of fear because it's new. You should, get angry and frustrated because it's hard and you're losing money. You don't really understand why, but as you kind of progress and become proficient enough, then we get to kind of see where some of the deeper psychological issues arise. And I say that, but I'm not saying they're necessarily personal. I think what I'm dealing with in my combination of sports psychology and therapy is what I call like performance flaws, right? Like there's, logical rationale for why you're experiencing these emotional fluctuations that have nothing to do with your parents. Right? I'm not putting you down on the couch, telling me to talk about your mom as a kid. We're talking about far more practical things like, high expectations or, the expectation to make money every day or every trade.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is the whole high expectations. People think they need to make money all the time. It should make a lot. They think what drives me nuts is so many people think if there's a huge move in the market, it should have been caught. Doesn't matter if it was up or down. They think they should have profited from that big move. How could we miss it? But the markets don't move in a way for you to catch everything. And that's the tough thing. And so how do you deal with high expectations? Because when you systemize stuff, you realize what the average return is per trade, how many trades there are. Suddenly your expectations go, you're like, whoa, that's not where I was really expecting it, but I guess this is good enough. I can grind myself to wealth. But
no, I think so. I think sometimes the expectations are born out of the original intent of why somebody came into the market. We can tell from the way you describe things that your intent for getting the markets, I mean, obviously it was to make money, but as is anybody as an entrepreneur, but it was also to systematize, like to challenge yourself to actually be able to get good at this thing. I think a lot of traders that come in, or people that want to trade come in wanting to make fast, easy money.
Yeah.
Right. And so to kind of crack through that expectation that shows up on a day-to-day email saying, what the heck, Chris, like, how do we miss this? How could you miss this? Right. Is to say, well, what's really your intent here? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a harder thing to kind of walk back to somebody. I can say it and call them out as I call in poker, mental game fish, right? Like people that, their intents are just sort of misaligned with the realities of the market. There's one trader that I talk about in the book who, he said at one point in one of our coaching sessions, he would rather be lucky than good. And because he made a bunch of money in Bitcoin, back in 2014, and decided to quit his job, but really didn't understand, how, like what it meant to be a good trader.
Yeah.
I didn't know the nuts and bolts of what it meant either, but I knew enough to understand that your mentality has to be, a bit sort of sober in understanding that, if you make easy money, it can disappear just as quickly. And so, yeah, I think that's a big part of cracking through those expectations.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend this morning actually, and he got into trading, and his first trade was he picked the top and the market crashed huge. This was years and years ago, like 2 decades ago. Anyways, that it ruined him. This is the worst thing that somebody could do is you get lucky, you hit a good trade. If you try to pick a bottom or a top and you nail it, it's the worst thing you could do as a new trader, because now you're thinking, well, that's where the big money is. That's what I want to do. I'm going to pick it. And I mean, picking a top and a bottom is absolutely deadly. And it's the last thing you really want to do, unless you just got some fun money. You'd be like, you know what, I'm going to toss a few grand in it just because I can. But if you're trying to do it as an actual strategy, it's it's just buying that lotto ticket. If it pays off, you're going to do really well. But yeah, it's tough because people just want that big instant money, and as soon as they get lucky, it really scars them for life until they blow up in a few accounts. I mean, I blew up 3 trading accounts, and when I was younger, you learn real quick. You're like, this is it. If you pretty much beat yourself up. You're like, if I blow this account up, I am toast. And I remember I was living in town in an old Century home when I blew up my 3rd account. I was like, you know what, this is absolutely crazy. And I just got so strict with myself about managing positions. I cut my position size down. And that was when I really applied on the strategy, which, back then I was trading futures. And you start trading, you take a loss, and then you kind of start getting really aggressive. And by the end of the day, you're swinging around huge amounts of money, trying to win back your loss, right? You keep stepping it up. And that's how I blew up my account. And that was when I stepped, I'm like, this is crazy. I am totally on the emotional side. Futures is just too much leverage that it sparks my emotions. And so I don't really trade futures. I follow futures. I use them for analysis because they're the real deal. But I trade ETFs, and I don't really get into leverage because for some reason it sparks the emotional side in me, and I'd much rather trade a larger sum of money with no leverage and watch the tide go up nice and slowly than throw in a tiny bit of money and watch it go all over the place and stress out, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then again, kind of differences between poker and trading. You can be a 1-2, kind of grinder, but suddenly find yourself playing for 1,000, 2,000 stakes. You can't do that in poker, but in trading, it can happen instantaneously. And I think that the emotional volatility that gets drawn out using leverage is something I see a lot. I mean, generally speaking, it's kind of like taking yourself from, like the 1-2 grinder, and suddenly you're playing at the World Series final table for, several $1 million. Like that kind of stress and pressure, it does invariably expose all those weaknesses. And I'm not surprised that you had some difficulty with it at that point, but
that's how you learn, right? You got to hit bottom to really learn.
Failure is kind of a great coach there, right? I mean,
yeah.
Certainly failed a lot, as a golfer, succeeded a lot too. But I mean, this is where it all this stuff kind of gets born out of. I mean, did you find that like the people in your subscribers and people that kind of work with you, what percentage of them do you think kind of come to trading, kind of with that right mentality, or how much of that do you think has to be kind of retrained through, beginning parts of your education?
Most of them are on the right side there because everything I write about in my interviews that I do, I mean, I try to explain, I'm not about trading fast. I'm not about trading all the time. My thing is, I think I've developed some of the most efficient ETF trading strategies in the world. We trade less than anyone else. We make bigger returns, and our drawdowns are a fraction. They're like 7% versus the SP 500. And we trade the index in bonds. And so I'm going the complete opposite of the 50 million people in the States that piled in to jump into trading with Robinhood accounts, right? I'm the complete opposite. And I try to perceive that. I want people to know that that's not me. And so a lot of the people are like that. They're slow. They understand my mentality. I'm about making money and consistent. I don't want to be glued to the screen. Let systems work, and it's a slower strategy. And sometimes this year's been a pretty choppy year. We're pretty much just treading water because if you were to look at the NASDAQ and a lot of sectors, a lot of them have just been chopping sideways all year. Even though the indexes have been grinding slightly higher, it's not a great year for big gains yet. But what the nice thing is your plateau or your plateaus and rallies in your portfolio and in the stock market, after a plateau, it's the launch pad. and it usually goes a lot higher. So it doesn't matter which way the market moves going forward from here. Whichever way it breaks is going to have a huge opportunity. We're going to have great opportunity later this year. The first half's been slow, and a lot of people realize that. It's, every trading strategy falls in and out of favor. And because this is a slower strategy, when it falls out of favor, it can take a couple quarters for the market to get back into favor. And then suddenly, we can skyrocket again and have a killer year within a couple months, we can make huge returns. And that's how every trading system goes. You got waves of good trades, wave of bad trades. Day trading, is great during high volatility, and it's a real pain when volatility is low. I mean, it's just the way it works.
Yeah, it's interesting how the market does go through those cycles. I think there's almost the challenge in its own right of being able to, if you're one of those that can't kind of deal in the short term, to have, as you said, different strategies and systems. But like, if you're working on your own, how long does it take you to really develop that stuff? It takes some time. I think people kind of come into trading, there's no barriers to entry except having the capital. And they think they can just kind of show up and play a PGA Tour event effectively.
Yeah.
Right? It's not quite like that. So, to develop the kind of competencies that you have, I mean, like you said, you've been doing this for 24 years, it takes some time. And I think people sometimes underappreciate, the amount of time that it really does take to develop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people who've got into the markets, as a lot of newbies, they've never even been really in a big market correction. They all kind of piled in after COVID. And so they haven't even really experienced a drawdown yet. And they've never experienced a bear market. I remember my first bear market, I was buying stocks and they had record earnings. They were making more quarter after quarter, yet their share price would still fall like 30, 40%. And that was when I lost it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. The whole fundamental side is BS. Get me out of here. And I just became a strict technical analyst. I'm following price. I don't care which way it goes. I'm following it. I don't care what the news is. So I don't follow any news, fundamentals, economic data, nothing. I just pull up a chart and I can tell you within a couple of seconds, I'm like, I like it, I don't like it, or I don't know what the heck it's doing. And it's pretty straightforward. And by going through that process of a bear market, learning that you can't trade the normal strategy in a bear market, you got to have a whole new set of strategies. It's not like you just flip your strategy upside down and trade it backwards. It's a totally different game playing, excuse me, a falling market. There's different rules and different speeds that things drop and pop. Yeah.
I see you do a lot of writing. I was looking at I forget the name of the website now, but I mean, you must have written, almost a weekly, or kind of article this entire year. I mean, is there something about like writing that really kind of helps to, because I know for me, writing helps me to consolidate my thoughts and my ideas. And I learn a ton from writing, even though I'm putting out something out there for others. It's helpful for me. I was curious if it was kind of similar for you. That
it is. I mean, it is soothing. Whenever you write, like I just got one of those new Remarkables. It's like a journal, digital journal. I love it. Sounds and feels like you're writing, but it's very soothing. I mean, to write something down and to write your thoughts and to share an idea and put some charts up. It just kind of regroups everything and it gives you time to process it while you make a chart and then you write about the chart. And, most of it really is just to kind of share what I'm seeing in the market, what the whole team is seeing. I don't write all the content. I've got another person who helps me write it. And it's really just trying to get out there and say, guys, these are the big trend pictures. Here's some short-term stuff. This is how we look at it. Just so people are kind of prepared of what's going on. And it's just something that I've always done. I've always written articles, and it's definitely kind of relaxes the brain when you get to write about it. And sometimes some of them come out really well. They're like, wow, I really, really like that. It feels good. And you get emails back saying from people like loving it, go, oh, I appreciate it. I love it. Or I think the same thing. And of course you get a lot of those other ones like, you're BS, which is just funny. I love how people can be so rude and ignorant in email. It's pretty funny, but
and polarizing too.
Yeah. And so when you're talking to traders, like what is it that, you do to help them avoid like the plateaus and the boredom and getting burned out and stuff? Do you find most of your traders are day traders? Are they super aggressive, big money traders? What kind of traders do you seem to deal with?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a mix. I mean, I think I've got, like I said, some institutional, big swingers that I work with, and then, the retail side is a mix between some scalpers and some day traders, and certainly some swing traders, like yourself, and some longer term option holds strategies, and but the big ways that I'm kind of helping them is, first and foremost, being able to kind of see what the heck is happening for them emotionally in real time. And I think a lot of them are able to recognize their fear and their tilts, their anger when it's big, when they're making some of the obvious mistakes, or they're, recognizing that they've just got to take a break and don't make mistakes, but they lose time kind of in front of the charts. And it's really kind of mapping those early, phase of that emotional buildup that's so key, because number one, you can't stop something you can't see, right? I mean, if you don't have your systems in place to spot the opportunity in the market to make a trade, it doesn't matter. You see it afterwards. I mean, that's the whole thing. So it doesn't matter if you can only identify, that you avoided a trade out of fear, or you got into one that you shouldn't have because of anger, afterwards. We got to see it beforehand. And so it's getting them to kind of understand that you've got this proficiency in recognizing patterns. Let's kind of use that existing competence and just apply it to yourself. And we're looking at the specific thoughts that come to mind. I've had a trader that struggled with some greed, right? And for him, when we first did this strategy, when he recognized, that he started thinking about the utility of money, that was his sort of first signal, right? That greed had kind of popped up. And this was well before it was actually going to affect his decisions. But now, like, the alarm bells went on. And so now he can kind of go into a little bit of a offense defense, kind of mode, where he's still working on what's going on in the charts, but he's very kind of conscious and aware of his emotions so that they're not going to overwhelm him. But because it is an iterative process, a couple weeks later, he realized that no, actually, when I opened my brokerage account to see what my P&L is, that was actually the first indicator. So, just randomly just checking, it was like a thing that he kind of excused himself for, kind of like the auto refreshing of position. That was sort of his first indicator. So all of the traders I work with, all of the traders you work with, they do have these sort of indicators, right, that their emotions are rising. What they haven't done is actually spent the time to study them and map them. So, second chapter of the book is all about kind of mapping, your pattern. It's mapping the greed, the fear, the anger, the confidence issues, even sometimes the discipline issues, so that you can kind of have this like kind of real time map in your mind, but also, you could actually complete it. I've got worksheets on my website. You complete it, you keep it on your desktop, you keep it on your, next to you and look at. So you're not kind of surprised by what these things happen. I think a lot of times traders also, when things go wrong, they make some big mistakes, or emotions kind of get in their way. The first thing we want to do is just kind of go blow some steam off and get away from things and kind of cool off. And my thoughts are the exact opposite. I'm not saying you keep trading. I'm saying that's the time to kind of download, pull open your Remarkable, or some other kind of piece of a paper or Word doc, and just get out of your head what's going on. Because otherwise all you're doing is just sticking a glass of water or sticking a cup under a leaky faucet, right? Your emotions are just going to rise. Like, we need to figure out how to shut the tap off permanently so that that leak is not there anymore.
What is the map process? You keep referring to the map. So what is the whole, like, there's obviously a whole bunch of sections to the map, right? So what would the mapping out your emotions, right? I guess your game plan.
So I'd say less kind of game plan and more about like what's actually happening, right? So the good thing is these things happen in patterns, right? The way that you get pissed off, is going to happen consistently, kind of time after time. So the first sort of phase of this is I want you to write down, what your thoughts are, what specific emotions come up, what's the trigger for it, right? Maybe it's for you have difficulty kind of holding a position to target. It gets 80% there, and now your mind just kind of freaks out. You see it's kind of ticking backwards, and you just want to lock it up just because. And you have these excuses that come to mind, right? That kind of convince you and seduce you into doing that. So we write that stuff down. There's probably some physical indications too. You could feel some tension in your stomach or your shoulders or maybe your head. Changes in your thought process, your decision making, your perception of the market. all those things we write down, like that's kind of the first phase. But then as you kind of keep doing that time after time, eventually we can begin to scale it, right? And we can say, okay, here's that level one, right? I mentioned the trader earlier, right? His level one changed, right? That moved to level two. What we want to try to do is go from a scale of like 1 to 10, where you take that initial kind of detailing out of your emotions kind of in real time as you're trading or afterwards, and then put it into this sort of scale of 1 to 10. Because the other thing I haven't mentioned here, we're dealing with kind of basic architecture in the brain. So the emotional system has the power to shut down the part of the brain responsible for controlling it. So it's a bit of a kind of a trickery of our own nature here. That is a fundamental principle we cannot control. Okay? Unless you have brain damage, right? This thing is going to be the way it is. So we kind of have to work within that confine. So you have to be able to recognize those early signs. So, for most traders, it's, levels 1 to 5. You got to recognize that stuff, because if you get past 5 for most traders, mistakes are inevitable at that point. The size of them is going to vary based on how emotional they are.
Yeah.
But if you don't recognize, especially those first 3, you make mistakes again without even really recognizing it. So at that point, now you recognize that you're tilted, but you've lost the part of the brain that's going to actually help you to control it and be able to calm yourself down.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I was watching Caesar. He's like the dog whisperer. I don't know if you
ever
heard.
Caesar Vermeulen.
So I was watching with my daughter the other day, because she's big into dogs. And he was talking about this. He was trying to help this couple that had a dog, and every time people would walk by, or a particular person would walk by, this dog would just go nuts, and he would always be tied up. And so he's talked to him, and he said exactly what you did. He says dogs, they said once they hit a certain point, he goes, look at the dog. See how he did this? You can tell he's starting to get aggravated. You instantly have to reach something, because as soon as the dog hits a certain point, the rest of his logic just shuts off, and he just goes into full on attack mode. And there's no reasoning with an animal or anybody once they click over into that primal rage or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, no reasoning is like the right way of framing that too. I mean, because in this spot, you're on your own. It's not like you've got a coach, your basketball player coach yanks you off the court and he can reason with you and sit you down and kind of force you. I mean, so as a trader, as a poker player, as an entrepreneur, as a golfer, like very often you have to be the athlete and the coach at the same time, and kind of toggling between those two things. So it's even harder to reason with yourself. But I mean, we've all been in spots where, our spouse or significant other, is trying to reason with us when we're not really in the right frame of mind, and it just doesn't happen. And you realize afterwards, like, wow, like, yeah, I was not in my right mind. And so yeah, it's an interesting way of kind of paralleling it with dogs. I mean, we do have similar brain structures. So, for some of us, we'd like to think that our logical minds are a little bit bigger than most dogs.
For sure.
That's not always the case.
Yeah, that's cool.
So Chris, so I saw also that you've got a program for like teaching kids on how to develop entrepreneurship skills. That was kind of a cool thing in your bio. What do you have going on there?
Sure. Yeah. So my daughter and I mean, I was really fortunate that I was an entrepreneur at a young age. I became very successful at a young age, and I mean, I've had a pretty good life, and I've always wanted to teach other kids and give back and help. And that was one of the reasons I got into trading. I went through a bankruptcy when I was a teenager. I know how I saw my parents, how it affected them. It's embarrassing. It's painful. It does so much damage for everyone involved, right? And that was one of the reasons when I saw how much money you could make in trading, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to master this. And then I want to help others. And so it kind of snowballed into just helping as many people as I can. And now I'm kind of at a point where it's always been my dream is to go and help kids, whether they're 8 years old, 18 years old, or 24 years old in university. I want to go and show people that here are the opportunities and how you can attack this market. And my goal is for like somebody in elementary school, grade, somebody who's not finished high school to come out of high school making more money than their teacher, their professor, or their parents. And they could have like 5 or 10 little one-page web businesses going. And what really inspired me was my daughter wanted to sell some stuff. She's a hardcore entrepreneur. You wouldn't believe the stuff she does, but she wanted to build this website. I said, well, let's do it. Let's record it. Let's make a project out of it. So in one day, we did like a pre-video where we said, this is what we want to do. I mapped it out on a piece of paper. She's sitting here with my dog. She wanted to build a web page that sells homemade, like organic dog treats.
Mm-hmm.
And so we mapped out what we were going to do. We talked to the screen, like we wanted to give this to other kids to watch. And it took us 5.5 hours. We went to the grocery store, bought the stuff, baked them, to the photo shoot there. We did the whole thing in 5.5 hours, built the site. And the website only took 26 minutes to build. We recorded it. We got lots of bloopers because we were learning as we were going. And then she's put YouTube buy buttons on it, and she's selling cookies, you know, in California, Idaho, Toronto, like mostly local pickup, but people are still ordering them from everywhere. And she's making like hundreds of bucks, and she loves it. And now she's teaching her friends how to make their own one-page websites. And it's just been amazing because the confidence goes through the roof. She went to Vistaprint, ordered her own business cards and a little lawn sign that sticks in. She did everything herself.
Wow.
And she's only 11 years old. And it's just, it blew my mind. And the connection between her and I now is just really amazing. So we're launching this program to help other kids. We're going to build her another website, record the process, bring kids in, do it live with them. They can build their own as well, as many as they want. And we're going to give them all the tools they need to do it with their parents. And it'll just be like a big thing where hopefully we get tens of thousands of kids with their own mini websites, whether they're selling local crafts or cookies or eventually move to online stuff. But what's really cool is last week, my daughter got another order for cookies, and she's like, oh, Dad, I need to make more cookies, which is a big process, right? She doesn't, it's not worth the time and effort, but it's the experience. But I said, hey, Mirabelle, I go, why don't we create a little PDF, a booklet of your recipe, the different cookies, the different shapes. We'll map out your business plan. We'll put it in a PDF. You can sell for like $1.99 or $4.99. And then you sell your business model and you can sell it worldwide. And she goes, do I have to make cookies still? I go, no. She goes, let's do it. I was like, perfect. We're finally into like the good phase, selling digital information, right? So I just want the rest of the world to, like, the kids to do that, because now she's free. She feels like she can do whatever she wants. And the whole mindset change has just been huge. And my son eventually will pick up on it even more. He's not in the phase yet. I don't want to push it on anyone, kind of let them fall into it if their mind is open to it. But yeah, so we're going to launch a thing on Kickstarter, a project, and we've got a platform that we're gamifying it. So as the kids do little steps and they finish the little things on our platform, they get points and rewards, and it buys them things to make their website even better. It gives them pre-formatted little emails and images and stuff. So we've made it so it's a game. They constantly get that trickle of rewards, and the brain loves it, and they build a business and they make all kinds of friends and stuff. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love all that. And it sounds like you're also kind of training the decision making too, right? Like, you know, taking here, all right, well, here's your problem. Well, go solve it, right? So you had a problem with dog treats. Now it's a problem of actually having to make the dog treats. And my niece, you know, kind of pandemic hit, and she started making ice cream cakes.
Yeah.
She loved desserts and started making ice cream cakes. And then, you know, she was selling them to, you know, some friends. And then of course it kind of got a little bit of buzz in the town, and she built a website. And then for her birthday, I bought her some lessons with, you know, WordPress, you know, kind of expert. But
yeah,
you know, you make your own website in 26 minutes using your video would have been a little bit cheaper than than what I did. But it was still cool though, because she got to work with them and figure out like kind of how to use some, you know, back end, you know, kind of WordPress plugins and customization, and, you know, kind of build it out as she wants. So now she kind of learned the website development side of it. She learned, the actual, obviously, cake making and entrepreneurial part of it. And then my daughter, of course, you know, is 7 years younger than she is. At 6 years old, so she started kind of a bead making business. And, you know, we built another website for her. And so, yeah, I think it's great to teach kids all this stuff too. And, you know, maybe eventually there'll be some mental game work we can do for them. You know, they lack a little bit more of that emotional architecture to control their emotions, but so still all fun stuff.
For sure. Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, Chris, there are kind of easy ways for kind of my audience to be able to kind of get a hold of you if there's questions. The TechnicalTraders.com best place to
they can just go there and use the contact form, and it'll get through to me. And And then you're jaredtendler.com for yours. And
Yeah. And
you've got some great stuff on there. Yeah.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, as I mentioned, the worksheets are there. I actually
Yeah.
also just released a free intuition ebook. I'd
I saw
say
that.
for the traders that are a little bit kind of farther along, it's really not for the beginners. I think, beginning traders using intuition means that they're having intuition based off of their, kind of non-trading experience that might give
Their
you
luck. Their luck.
yeah, I mean, well, you might see some opportunities, but that has nothing to do with your trading proficiency. It has to do with
Yeah.
so, but there's, that ebook is out and available there. But I'm also on Twitter, and at Jared Tendler. I think you are at TheTechnicalTraders.com. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or on Twitter. I think we actually have almost the identical number of followers on Twitter, which is kind of funny when I look at that.
Yeah, it's slow. I don't know. I don't connect so much on Twitter. I post some stuff, but it's it really I've never been into social. I've never been a big social butterfly when it comes to that stuff.
Yep.
In the last year, I've kind of started to do it more. It really is. That is kind of my new way to the news. I don't really follow news, but I find if you follow the right Twitter leads, man, it's really awesome. You get great insight.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of getting the hang of Twitter, but it's interesting.
Yeah. No, I like Twitter because for me it's like a easy way to kind of interact with people and post some ideas on there, get some feedback. Sometimes in real time, which is fun. But listen, Chris, it's been awesome talking with you.
Yeah.
And, certainly excited to kind of hear about your systems and strategies and whatnot and your perspective. So I appreciate the time, man. It's been
Yeah, well, I
fun.
appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me, and congrats on the book. It's a great read.
Yeah, thanks very much. All right, man.
All right,
What's up?
take care.